Testimony this morning. The chair will now recognize members for 5 minutes of questions, and I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. Mr. Chason, you testified that Port Fourchon services 90% of the deepwater rigs in the Gulf of America, and that Gulf production contributes nearly 20% of the nation's oil supply. What would happen to United States energy prices if federal leasing and permitting delays continue to disrupt your port's operations?
Simply, energy prices would remain high, including gas prices at the pump. Again, they would stay elevated, and that impacts every household in America.
The need for energy is just increasing. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
If we have to win the AI war, we need energy. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson, you mentioned that oil and gas produced in the Gulf has a carbon intensity that is nearly a half of the global average for deep water fields. Can you explain how maintaining Gulf production helps reduce global emissions while keeping energy affordable, safe, and clean for American families?
Thank you, Congressman. The emissions footprint in the Gulf is less than half because we don't vent, we don't flare like other countries do. If we do not produce this energy, China will produce it, Iran will produce it, and Russia will produce it with a much higher emissions footprint. This energy comes, the oil and the gas from the Gulf comes directly into the domestic continental United States. It allows us to maintain low and stable natural gas prices and low and stable oil prices.
Thank you. Mr. Tarpley, your testimony emphasized that delays in lease sales and permitting have caused job losses and reduced GDP. How quickly could U.S. offshore investment and job growth rebound if Congress implemented permitting reform and guaranteed lease sales?
Mr. Chairman, I think it could be quite quick. In fact, a study has shown that we could have a $4.8 billion a year in additional revenue by 2040 with additional leasing and permitting reform. We could also support 55,000 additional jobs in the Gulf. That's very significant, and it could happen quite quickly.
Give me the number of jobs again.
55,000.
55,000 jobs. You know, other countries are recognizing the need to meet increasing demand, energy demand, and are aggressively expanding their offshore oil and gas industries. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What lessons can Congress learn about what these countries have done to create more stable investment environment for U.S. offshore development? In other words, how do we bring these investments back to the United States instead of these other countries that are eager to responsibly develop their own resources?
Regulatory certainty is the key, Mr. Chairman. A offshore oil and gas production facility costs between $500 million to as much as $1 billion. It might take 10 years between getting the lease to get to first oil. That's a huge financial investment, and when you add regulatory uncertainty to that, it's a harder decision to make. Other countries have recognized that and are actively trying to pull in that investment to their basins.
I think we talk about it in the industry, and it's not just in the energy industries, it's in the mining industries and other. The certainty for permitting reform is increasingly important for the investment that needs to follow. Mr. Chason, I was down at Port Fourchon on a trip a couple years ago. We spoke. I recall being in a room, full of industry experts, and this was under the Biden administration. They were begging us to change the direction of this country. And as we know, for instance, the LNG exports. We know now that Speaker Johnson, when he spoke to President Biden had no idea he signed a ban. He told Speaker Johnson that he thought he was signing a study of energy. That's unacceptable in my mind. I would just like to say that I brought this up on the House floor last week. 37 below in my hometown last week. That's with the wind chill. I've got 6 children, 5 still at home. When it's 37 below and colder, I need reliable, clean, affordable energy. The windmills aren't going in northern Minnesota. They're frozen. The sun may not be shining. My 90-year-old mother and my 91-year-old father to live comfortably in that cold weather for long periods of time. It's affordable, reliable, clean, non-intermittent energy that they need to stay alive.